entered the residence, went to the third floor, and with a knife, Madison Mogen and Kaylee Gonzalez.
Have you ever wondered what it's really like to live every day behind bars, with no chance of ever leaving? Bryan Kohberger went from a quiet college student to the man sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison, 4 life sentences without parole. Concrete walls, strict rules, and almost total isolation have replaced the freedom he once knew. But what does that kind of confinement do to a person? Can 23 hours alone in a cell break someone in ways no trial could show?
It's the prison where Bryan Kohberger will spend the rest of his life in solitary confinement, locked in his cell 23 hours a day.
This is the harsh, unfiltered reality of Kohberger's prison life, worse than anyone expected. The crimes that shook Idaho. November the 13th, 2022, started like any other cold night in Moscow, Idaho. Students were studying, hanging out with friends, and dreaming about the future. But by morning, the town woke to a nightmare that would never be forgotten. 4 young people were dead, brutally stabbed in their off-campus home, leaving behind families, friends, and a community searching for answers. Kaylee Gonzalez, at 21, was a bright, outgoing marketing student with an infectious smile and big plans for the future. Her best friend, Madison Mogen, also 21, shared dreams and late-night laughs with Kaylee working at a local restaurant while planning her life ahead. Zana Kernadel, 20, a kind and energetic sorority sister, and Ethan Chapin, 20, Zana's boyfriend and a fraternity brother, had promising futures, full of hope and ambition. That night, all 4 were sleeping when the unthinkable happened. The attack was sudden and frenzied. There were no signs of forced entry, nothing to warn anyone that danger had arrived. A large knife was used to strike while they slept, leaving behind a trail of horror. Experts later compared the violence to infamous perpetrators like Ted Bundy, describing it as chilling in its precision and savagery. There was no robbery, no assault, just pure, senseless violence. Families shared their grief publicly, their words echoing across news outlets and social media, showing a pain that was almost too heavy to bear. The investigation quickly turned to Bryan Kohberger, 28 at the time, a criminology PhD student at nearby Washington State University. On December 30th, 2022, he was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania, over 2,000 miles away. How did authorities track him down? DNA, recovered from a knife sheath at the scene, was matched to him using genealogy databases. Surveillance cameras spotted a white Hyundai Elantra, the same type he owned, driving near the victim's home multiple times that night. Phone records placed him nearby, and neighbors remembered his intense stares and late-night drives that now looked suspicious in hindsight. Even with evidence, one question left everyone talking: why? There was no clear motive. Online forums and experts debated endlessly. Some wondered if his obsession with criminology, where he studied criminal behavior and even surveyed people about dark fantasies, had pushed him too far. Others suggested random rage, or some hidden darkness behind a quiet, socially awkward exterior. High-engagement crime videos pointed out his online posts claiming to feel no emotion, fueling questions. Did he view the victims as subjects in a living experiment? His life only added to the mystery. He was vegan, fit, methodical, and studious, a stark contrast to the chaotic violence he allegedly unleashed. Detectives and commentators speculated, but the truth remained hidden behind legal restrictions and gag orders. The investigation dragged on for months, keeping many details private, while the pain of families and the shock of the community stayed very public. Through it all, the world was left wondering, how does someone who studies crime become the cause of such horror? 4 young lives were gone, and a college town would never be the same. Kohberger now faced 4 life sentences without parole, a punishment some say mirrors the endless isolation he caused others to experience in one night of unimaginable violence. Sentencing day, drama.
The 30-year-old former criminology student reached a plea deal earlier this month that spares him the death penalty and waives his right to appeal.
July 23rd, 2025, was a day the courtroom would never forget. Families and friends filled the seats in the Ada County Courthouse in Boise, Idaho, some holding hands, others wiping tears as they waited for justice. Bryan Kohberger walked in, calm, almost quiet, ready to face sentencing after entering a guilty plea 3 weeks earlier on July 2nd. This straight guilty plea admitted full responsibility for the crimes, avoiding a full trial and the death penalty in exchange for life without parole. But the punishment was still severe and final. Judge Stephen Hippler spoke clearly and firmly. He described the crimes as heinous, cruel, and shocking, emphasizing how deeply they had hurt the victims' families, calling Kohberger a faceless coward who had slaughtered 4 innocent young people in a grotesque act of evil. Kohberger was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without any chance of parole, plus 10 years for burglary and $270,000 in fines and civil penalties. He would never leave prison alive. There was no death penalty because prosecutors agreed to drop it as part of the plea deal, giving the families closure without a prolonged trial. Experts later explained that this meant he avoided a potentially quick end via execution, delayed in Idaho due to issues like botched injections and unfinished firing squad facilities, but his life in prison would be slow, isolated, and harsh. Then came the victim impact statements. Family members stood one by one and spoke about the young lives that were taken. Surviving roommate Dylan Mortensen, who was 19 at the time of the murders, described her shattered sense of trust and safety. Steve Goncalves, Kaylee's father, called Kohberger a complete joke. Olivia Goncalves, Kaylee's sister, labeled him a sociopath, drawing applause from the courtroom. Christy Goncalves, Kaylee's mother, wished him a life of misery, saying, "You are officially the property of the state of Idaho." They talked about how much they missed Kaylee, Madison, Zana, and Ethan, and how their absence left a hole that could never be filled. These statements were raw and powerful, filling the courtroom with a heavy, emotional silence. Every word reminded everyone of the loss and the pain caused by the attacks. Kohberger stayed calm throughout. He did not react, did not show emotion, kept his eyes forward, and declined to speak when given the opportunity. This was very different from the family's raw grief. Some viewers watching the news noticed this and wondered what it meant. Was he really feeling nothing, or was he thinking carefully about what was coming next? After the sentencing, Kohberger's defense team had already raised mental health issues during the plea process, but the court decided that the punishment should match the severity of the crimes. Families left with a mix of relief that justice was done and sadness for their losses. The courtroom had seen a man's life change forever, and the community felt the weight of what had happened. Once the hearing ended, Kohberger was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. He had a new identity now, number 163214. He was heading to IMSI, a supermax prison in Idaho. This is a very strict prison where inmates spend most of their day alone in their cells. In some places inside IMSI, prisoners can spend up to 23 hours a day without seeing anyone. Only a few minutes are allowed for exercise, and visits are limited. It is designed to prevent fights or escapes, but it also means a lot of time alone with your thoughts. For Kohberger, everything he knew about life was gone. From studying at university to living far from home, he now faced a daily routine in a cell, with rules he could not control. The courtroom drama, the family's statements, and the judge's words were behind him. Ahead of him lay a world that few ever see, a place where time moves differently and every day feels like the last. So what happens next inside IMSI? How does someone go from being a student to living in almost total isolation? The answer will show just how serious life in a supermax prison can be, and how it changes the world for someone who has done something that shocked everyone. The story is far from over, and the next chapter will take us even deeper into what it's like inside one of the toughest prisons in America. Inside IMSI, just 10 miles south of Boise, Idaho, sits the Idaho Maximum Security Institution, or IMSI, standing like a giant fortress made of concrete and steel. Built in 1989, it was designed to hold the most dangerous criminals in the state. With 535 beds, 518 filled, it is the only supermax prison in Idaho. Some reports rank it as the 15th worst prison in the United States, and videos about the toughest prisons highlight why. Overcrowding, rough treatment, and tough living conditions make it a place few could endure for long. From the outside, the prison looks impossible to escape. Razor wire fences coil endlessly, cameras watch every corner 24 hours a day, and electronic sensors alert guards to the slightest movement. Inside, life is even harsher. There is no air conditioning, only swamp coolers that barely work. Summers reach 100 degrees, while winters freeze bones and chill the air to near ice. Cells are small, grey, and often poorly cleaned. Some reports mention struggling ventilation systems, and in a few cases, biohazard issues made conditions almost unbearable. IMSI houses several types of prisoners. There is a death row, with 8 inmates serving the harshest sentences, and some of them have notorious reputations. The prison also has an acute mental health unit, specially designed to prevent at-risk behaviors, with anti-jump fencing and strict monitoring. Protective custody blocks are for inmates who need extra safety, like J Block, where Bryan Kohberger now spends his days. In this block, lockdowns last up to 23 hours a day, with only a brief time outside in restraints. The cells are quiet, but that quiet can be almost louder than shouting because the mind has nowhere to escape. In recent years, the new warden, Randy Valley, has worked to improve life at IMSI. Programs include mentorship for younger inmates, dog training lessons for veterans, and initiatives that have reduced mental health crises by 50%. But even with these changes, challenges remain. Hunger strikes in 2024 highlighted medical neglect and cleanliness issues, showing how fragile conditions can still be. Videos and tours shared by journalists reveal that behind these walls, life is not just lonely. It can feel dangerous and unpredictable. Whispers from inside the prison tell a story that goes beyond official reports. Overcrowding, understaffing, and tense relationships with guards make daily life tense. Some inmates talk about riots, while others describe long hours of nothing but waiting. Compare it to ADX Florence, sometimes called the Alcatraz of the Rockies, and you can see why IMSI has a reputation as Idaho's ultimate supermax. Time seems to stretch forever in these cells, and even small tasks can feel exhausting when every day is structured, controlled, and monitored. For Kohberger, J Block isn't just a cell. It's a world of routine and restriction. Every day he wakes to the same harsh fluorescent lights, moves through the same narrow corridors under constant watch, and returns to a cell that feels more like a cage than a room. Meals are routine, recreation is limited, and interaction with other people is rare. 23 hours alone each day, and 1 hour of movement that is tightly controlled. The mind can begin to play tricks in such isolation, turning quiet hours into long stretches of reflection or fear. What do prisoners endure behind these walls? Some endure the quiet despair, some the anger or fights with others, and some battle the mental weight of being locked away for decades. Kohberger's daily grind is a stark reminder that supermax life isn't just punishment, it's an endless test of patience, endurance, and mental strength. Each day repeats itself, and each day stretches longer than the one before. Next, we'll see what a typical day looks like for him inside J Block, where the routine is relentless and every moment feels like a challenge. Kohberger's daily nightmare. Inside J Block, Bryan Kohberger's life is a never-ending grind.
Just when you thought Bryan Kohberger couldn't sink any lower in what many are calling the final insult to the victims' families.
For 23 hours each day, he's confined to a tiny 8 by 10 foot concrete cell. The walls are bare, cold, and unyielding. A thin mattress lies on a steel bunk, and a single steel unit serves as both toilet and sink. For someone used to freedom, late-night drives, and long study sessions, this is a world that feels frozen in stone. Meals are pushed through a slot in the door. Non-vegans get hot dogs or salad. Vegans, like Kohberger, receive barley, beans, and simple vegetables. Most food is lukewarm, and missing commissary bags sometimes leave complaints. These small frustrations build up quietly, unnoticed by the outside world. Coffee and chips are allowed from commissary orders, but every item must arrive through official channels. Even the little comforts come with strict rules. Recreation is limited to 1 hour a day in a chain-link cage, alone. No games, no teammates, just a small area to walk, jog, or stretch. Every step is watched. Guards escort him with belly chains and leg irons, controlling his movement at all times. Showers happen only 3 times a week, short and supervised. The same fluorescent lights flicker overhead every time he steps out, the same sounds echoing in the corridors. It's a life stripped of freedom, where even small routines are tightly controlled. Kohberger has access to a tablet for $100, restricted to approved apps. No internet, no streaming videos, no free browsing. He can send messages, but only simple, monitored ones. Other inmates sometimes complain when he lingers too long at the tablet or paces at odd hours. Before his transfer, reports said he washed his hands excessively and took long showers. Now, in J Block, the heat, the failing swamp coolers, and the cold winter pipes only amplify discomfort. The stench of unwashed cells, poor ventilation, and close quarters hangs like a cloud that never lifts. The routine wears on the mind as much as the body. Hours blend into days, and days into weeks. The clang of heavy doors, the hum of fluorescent lights, the echo of distant voices. It never stops. Isolation can play tricks on anyone, no matter how strong. Some report pacing at night to cope, moving in patterns to occupy the mind. Others develop small rituals to feel in control. For Kohberger, whispers from the block suggest he keeps to himself, quietly adjusting, but the monotony is relentless. For Kohberger, the nightmare isn't just the concrete or chains, it's the endless repetition, the silence, and the unyielding sense of being watched. Every day is measured in the smallest details: meals, movements, showers, and a single hour outside in a cage. Beyond the steel and stone, the real test is the mind. How long can someone endure this? Hour after hour, day after day. Next, we'll explore how that isolation begins to affect him psychologically, the cracks in the mind that may be even more terrifying than the walls around him. Psychological torment and rumors. Life inside, IMSide doesn't just punish the body, it punishes the mind. For Bryan Kohberger, every day in J Block is measured in hours of confinement.
Next week marks 6 months since Bryan Kohberger pleaded guilty to murdering 4 students at the University of Idaho.
Silence and harsh routines. With so little control over his environment, feelings of anxiety and depression build like a storm. Experts in prison psychology, like those featured in Buried in a Box, explain that prolonged isolation flattens emotions, disrupts sleep, and even slows cognitive thinking. Over time, the mind struggles to focus, and thoughts twist in endless loops. Some sources warn that extreme isolation can push inmates toward at-risk behaviors, though there's no evidence Kohberger has acted on this. Inmates watch each other carefully, and being in protective custody doesn't make someone invisible. Even behind locked doors, taunts can slip through, kicks on the metal doors, knocks on the vents, and shouted insults echoing down the hall. Detective Chris McDonough, in high-profile reporting for Banfield, explains that prisoners accused of violent crimes against women and children are especially shunned, becoming targets for harassment. The whispers in the block claim that everyone knows who he is, who he hurt, and the social isolation can feel worse than the walls themselves. Some inmates, like Thomas Creech or Gerald Pizzuto, have faced similar notoriety, and rumors suggest Kohberger sometimes compares himself to historical criminals, Bundy being the example everyone mentions because of his criminology studies. Others speculate that his intelligence, combined with legal knowledge, might make him a jailhouse lawyer, able to navigate prison rules and filings better than most. But smart or not, the psychological pressure is relentless. Will the constant vent harassment and endless pacing push him to a breaking point, Or will he adapt, perhaps leaning on faith or small routines to survive? Rumors swirl that some high-profile inmates try religion or other strategies to secure slightly better meals or calmer treatment, though none are confirmed. By 2026, whispers of change begin to circulate. Hunger strikes in 2024 drew attention to medical neglect, hygiene issues, and overcrowding in IMSI. Reports from outside inspections suggest Warden Randy Valley's reforms are making small but noticeable improvements. Dog training programs for veterans, mentorship initiatives, and a significant reduction in mental health watch cases. Could these changes eventually reach J Block, where Kohberger resides? Some sources speculate that improved conditions might lead to transfers to slightly less isolating areas, though the risk of riots targeting high-profile inmates always looms. Experts caution that long-term isolation can warp behavior. The toughest prison reports describe how extreme solitude often creates paranoia, stress, and anxiety that lasts long after release or forever. Detective McDonough notes that protective custody can feel like a double-edged sword. It shields the inmate from violence but also strips away human contact, leaving a person trapped with nothing but their thoughts. Outro prison life can be harsher than anyone expects. What would you do in his shoes? If this story shocked or intrigued you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated on real-life stories, shocking realities, and the untold truths behind bars.